Minutes ago, and I wanted to say that we're so glad that you were able to also accompany us here at Congress Hall, because it was shortly after the adoption of the U.S. Constitution that the city of Philadelphia served as the temporary capital for the United States. And we are now seated in the actual building where the U.S. Congress served from 1790 until the year 1800. As you look around this room, folks, did you notice that we are now seated in the former U.S. House of Representatives? And when the House of Representatives served in this room, who do you think met on the second floor? The senators. The senators met upstairs on the second floor. And you're invited to join us in a couple of minutes as we also explore the upper house. Ladies and gentlemen, I have fantastic news. As you assumed your seat in this chamber, you just became an elected member of the United States Congress. How does it feel to be a sitting member of Congress? Feel pretty cool? Yeah, it feels pretty awesome, doesn't it? And may I ask, what states do you represent?
Tennessee.
Welcome from Tennessee, welcome from New York. Anywhere else?
Pennsylvania.
And Pennsylvania, outstanding, outstanding. Now, representatives, according to the Constitution, in the House, each state is represented based on population. In the chair that you're sitting in, at the time, you represented 30,000 people. Spoke for 30,000 people. Are you ready for the salary? As a member of Congress, you will earn $6 a day. So, are you still motivated? I hope that you are, because at the time, $6, that was a decent income for that time period. Folks, I wanted to argue that the Congress that served here was perhaps our country's most important Congress, simply because they were the first Congress, and they had to make the Constitution work. And as they were implementing this government, some very significant firsts took place here. As you take a look at that door you just entered, folks, did you notice that when the Congress arrived, that one of their initial acts was to honor the legacy of a particular founder? As you look directly at that bus, does anyone perhaps recognize the man who they honored? Is that man above the door moving off of them? Especially here in Philadelphia, you can see around Philadelphia about this guy. There's mention above the door. Yes. Unfortunately, by the time the Congress arrived, Franklin had just passed away a few months earlier, so he never actually served in this chamber. But as a tribute to his legacy, they placed a bust above the door. So at least symbolically, he's still a part of Congress, Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania. Members of Congress, we were discussing previously how each state is represented based on population. Well, what is that event that must take place every 10 years in order to determine the population? It's got to take a census count every 10 years. Well, when the Congress arrived, they were in the midst of the first census that was ever taken. They were in the total population couldn't perhaps be any more than 2 million people in the entire country. When they finished the count, they were surprised to find a larger number. The number was closer to 4 million people. Ladies and gentlemen, at the time, this is where the building came to an end. To provide more room, they had to tear down the wall and extend the building in that direction. Virtually overnight, the number of delegates will increase from a mere 65 members to a total of 106 members. What a surprise by the people living in the young nation. Members of Congress, we just finished counting the population. But can you imagine another event that perhaps took place that would also involve adding more congressmen? Could they possibly add anything to the country?
States.
And they also added more states. They also added additional states, exactly. But while they were meeting here, they admitted, let me ask, sir, you're visiting from, they admitted Tennessee as a state here. Tennessee was admitted to the Union in this building, 1796. 1794, they admitted Kentucky. And in 1791, they admitted Vermont. That's the first 3 states, Vermont, Kentucky, and Tennessee. As those states were admitted, they were admitted as equal states, equal to the original 13. Ladies and gentlemen, does the name James Madison sound familiar? He was one of our future presidents. He actually served here as a delegate prior to becoming president. Well, while Madison was sitting in this chamber, he indicated his desire to see the inclusion of a listing of basic freedoms written into the Constitution. Through his tenacity and his diligent work, his dream became a reality because it was during this time that the first 10 amendments were officially added into the Constitution. Is there a better name that we sometimes use to describe those first 10 amendments? Is there a better name that we sometimes use? The Bill of Rights. Yeah, the Bill of Rights guaranteeing our basic freedoms, such as freedom of speech. How about another freedom? Well, let me ask this. What amendment right are we practicing currently in this country? Freedom to assemble and exchange ideas. The Bill of Rights is arguably the most important part of the Constitution, guaranteeing the freedoms that we enjoy and also cherish. Folks, although the Constitution does not make any allowance or provision for this idea of political factions, that it's important to note that during this time, the members gradually began to develop into two competing factions here. And the factions that emerged in this room, they represented opposing views about the role of government in our lives. And this may come as a surprise, but what were they fighting over? Well, primarily they were fighting over taxes. They were also fighting over immigration. They were even fighting over states' rights versus strong national government. They were fighting over business interests versus agricultural interests. Ladies and gentlemen, do these issues sound vaguely familiar? We're having the same discussion today that we're having back in the 70s. It's the same debate that we're still having to this day. And folks, what do you think these two factions will one day become? We have two of these today. Yeah, our two political parties, exactly. These are literally planted here in Congress Hall. Now, not to start on anybody, but if you'd like to know how partisan things became, I have a picture for this. Ladies and gentlemen, what are these two men doing in this picture? What's happening in this picture? What are these guys doing? See what they're doing, folks? They're having a duel, and the duel occurred right here on this floor. The two members of Congress, they exchanged insults, and it resulted in a physical confrontation. The members apparently were separated, but it also illustrated the growing divide. This became a very divided period here in Congress Hall, a very passionate time in our nation's founding period. Folks, I wanted to conclude our visit today with a special story. And most people would say that this event was the ultimate test to our ability to govern ourselves during this early period. And this event is sometimes referred to as the peaceful transfer of power. It was roughly in this location, folks, where John Adams was administered the office to become the country's second president. And his inauguration answered a burning question. Could the country survive without George Washington? Washington was unanimously elected 2 terms as our nation's first president. He was a man who was beloved by the majority of the people. At the time, there were no limits to the number of terms a person could be elected to, and there were many people who wanted him to be elected every 4 years. But by the middle of the second term, Washington was adamant about retirement. He was getting older. He missed his family back in Virginia. He yearned to return to being a private citizen. By making that decision, when the elections were held, the country saw a close race between Adams and Jefferson. Adams would win by a few votes, but because he was the victor, he was duly inaugurated here. And at that point, everyone realized the country could withstand the transfer of power from one president to another. One of the greatest tests to our Constitution. Well, we'd like to take a moment to ask whether you may have any questions about the room or questions about Congress or anything that you see or anything you may be curious about.